Hello and happy Friday Eve, man. We got a lot to get into today. It's going to be a jam-packed show. I'm super excited. First and foremost, we're going to talk to Tattnall County football coach, get to know a little bit more about his group and his team. And I got Brett Greenberg, former Score Atlanta intern, who is now with Bama 247, to talk about Alabama. And then we'll conclude with my top 10 headlines for the weekend, a little bit about softball, and a little bit about what's been going on in the sporting world. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Tattnall County head coach. Hey, Coach, what's going on? How you doing?
Doing good. Doing good.
All right. Appreciate you coming a little bit more about your program. We'll go ahead and start first and foremost with David Hill. I know he was one of your stud running backs from last year, so I just want to make sure, is he coming back to the team this year, and it's kind of what separates him from the rest. I believe he was all-region honors running back last year.
Well, he was, but he's not. He's no longer with us. His stepdad took a job at a private school, so he's no longer with us. He transferred over to a private school over in Vidalia. But we have some guys that are replacing him. Xavier Friendly, with he has a few offers already. Probably one of the best deep snappers in the state of Georgia. Georgia Southern's offered him, Georgia State, FAU. He's going to be a really, really good football player. Not only is he a good snapper, but also he's been very prolific at linebacker for us. Another one of our top players is Greg Edwards, my bad. Greg Edwards plays defensive tackle for us. We call him the monster. I mean, he is something special. We're trying to get him out there. He's probably about 6'2", 6'3", right at about 275. He's gonna be he's good, really good football player.
Yes, sir. And let's talk about today. I know you got a scrimmage against Bryan County. Just again, want to thank you for coming on. Just what are you
Yeah.
hoping to see from your boys tonight in the scrimmage? What are some of those kinks you just want to get
Biggest
out
thing we
before
want
the
to see
season?
tonight is yeah. We had a good summer. We went to a couple OTAs. We did an OTA at Burke County with Coach Stevens and Coach Davis, and then we did another OTA in Macon with Peach County and Dublin and Howard High School. Um, so tonight we kind of want to got a question mark on some backup guys. But one of the biggest things we don't want to happen is somebody get hurt. So we're going to have it modified. And it's hot down here in Southeast Georgia, and this week been really hectic trying to get into practice, and so we want to get into this, work some kinks out of some things, but we don't want anybody to get hurt.
Yes, sir. Well, tell me a little bit about your trenches this season. How is that looking for your group? Let's start with offensive line. Any returning starters, or who's going to be some players in some key roles this season, and then defensive line.
Yeah, offensive line wise, we got a couple returners. We got Daquan Gardner coming back. We lost some guy, Myron Addison was one of our starters. We lost him in the spring with the ACL. But we were able to replace one of our other returner all region offensive guard, Quaylen Thomas. He's back. We got a big tackle that was a sophomore, a freshman last year, and sophomore this year, about 6'3", right at about 305. Jordan Williams. We're really excited about him. Going to be a big kid. Got a new center, Marcus Coleman. He's done fabulous in there. Our offensive line has really came up and improved a lot. They improved a lot over the summer. I'm very, very happy with those guys. Uh, David Castro was one. He also has stepped on the scene. And then we got our tight end, Leviticus Butler. He was our tackle last year, and we moved him to tight end this year. We feel like he's going to be, for what we do on offense, he's going to help us better at the tight end position. Uh, those guys have had a great summer, great workout. They hadn't missed a workout. They've done everything that we've asked them, which is, me being a former offensive line, which we really love about them. Defensive line wise, I just talked about Greg Edwards, heck of a football player. A lot of scouts they're looking at him. I think when this season is over with, he'll have probably more offers than he's staying. Lane Dutton was a freshman last year. Good football player. He's replacing another kid that we had, and they're just identical. We had Keegan Moore, who had offers from Air Force and Valdosta last year, and Lane has been able to step right into those shoes. And then we have a nose guard, Robinson. Um, Tashard Robinson, who has stepped in at the nose, got a lot of playing time last year. But the biggest one up there that front is Greg Edwards. He's all state, all region. I mean, he's more alls in front of his name than you can shake a stick at.
Yes, sir. And then you talked a little bit about your linebackers early on when you came on. Xavier Friendly, excuse me, and then Landon
And that's
Salty.
that's pretty much for uh, our running back. They say we run. Yeah. Xavier Friendly is playing our middle linebacker.
Yes, sir.
He is phenomenal. I mean, he's a freak of nature. Kid, runs fast. He got all the tools. Like I said, he's got short. They want him, to come in. He's one of the best deep snappers in the state. But he can also play the game, not only just be a deep snapper. Also, one of our other linebacker, Andre Anderson. Andre is one of our good linebackers. He played a lot last year. He actually played some nose for us last year, and we were able to move him to the linebacker. Isaac, not um, Brown. Isaac Brown is playing some linebacker for us. He was a corner. We moved him to the inside. These are kids that played last year, and they can play, and they know our defense, and they know our defensive scheme. And our defensive coordinator, Coach Williams, we've been together forever, and he knows those kids. And our linebackers have a lot more experience on the field at defense, but they're going to be new linebackers, but they played a lot of defense.
Yes, sir, certainly. And then I know this is really important when being a football coach, right? Naming your captains, right? Sometimes it's 3 players, sometimes it's 4, sometimes it could be 5. So just tell me about who are going to be Tattnall County's captains this season that you're going to be kind of dependent on.
Probably the 2 guys, Greg Edwards and Xavier Friendly. We only have about 5 or 6 seniors, so those 2 guys we're leaning on for a lot of leadership. They played a lot of football for us since I got here. This will be my 4th county, and I've had those guys since freshman. So right now, I would say our main 2 captains, which are. Am I getting frozen in it?
Yeah, you did a little bit.
I saw my picture sitting still.
Yes, sir. Okay, so those are your main captains. Got you. And then let's talk about kind of playing in that competitive region, right? You play Appling County, Pierce County, Toombs County, Vidalia. Just tell me a little bit about playing in a tough region and what you need to kind of have to be prepared to hopefully win it this year.
Yeah, we have to be on our P's and Q's when we play in this region. We got our 4 non-region games, which we those games to get ourselves ready to play in the region. Toombs County is a strong football team. I coached over there for 6 years, so I know the tradition. Coach Marsh was the head coach, and he's moved and gone back to Frostproof. But they're not going to skip a beat. Coach Martin has been with him forever, and everything they do is still going to be the same, rich in tradition. Then Vidalia, everybody know they're rich in tradition. And then you still got the Appling County and Pierce. And you can't slip on Windsor Forest and Brantley and those other teams. Because, I mean, at any point in this region, you can lose on a Friday night. It is a very, very strong, very well coached league of football, especially in AA.
Yes, sir. And then I want to throw it to you just to talk a little bit about your back end this season. Just tell me about some of those players that's going to be starting for you, any return starters on the back end, guys you're going to be kind of dependent on in your secondary.
Oh, our secondary is going to be, really to be honest with you, it's going to be kind of young. We got a Tristan Williams at free safety. They're very athletic kids, but they're young as far as playing football. Tristan Williams at our free safety, and then we got Trey Rogers is going to be our other starting corner, and then we have Cam Davis. Now, Cam has a lot of experience. Probably one of our best corners in the secondary, and those guys, they're very athletic, but they don't have a whole lot of game experience other than Cam Davis. So, it's going to be some ups and downs and some bruises that we'll take. But playing in this league, you got to stop the run first before we worry about the pass.
That's a good point. And speaking of that, Coach, just what do you think is your kind of biggest strength coming into the season that, maybe a group that you probably don't have to worry as much about, they kind of got it. What's the kind of that strength for Tattnall County this season?
I think our strength, and it was funny, me and my defense coordinator were just in here talking about it, comparing this team to last year's team. And we feel like this team has more chemistry, plays well together. The leadership is strong. They do a good job of taking care of each other, and they bought into what we're doing. And that's one of the things we trying to preach is being all in on what we do. As you know, in this day and age with so much going on with kids and going to this school and going to that school, and we sell our kids on being Tattnall County Battle Creek Warriors and taking pride in it. And I think this group has bought into that.
Yes, sir. And then, what are some goals you just set forward this season you just want your team to kind of accomplish? Obviously, I know it starts tonight, setting that tone, and then your non-region games as well. But just what are some things you want to accomplish this year?
One of the biggest things we want to try to win the region because we feel like if we can win the region, then we'll set ourselves up to be successful in the first round of state playoffs. We've been in the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years I've been here, so I feel like we've got another chance to get in those playoffs once again. But we want to win the region, get into the playoffs, and then everybody's goal is to be that state champ. But we want to have that winning season, win the region, and just the simple goals and take it one game at a time.
Yes, sir. And then I know you've battled against Thompson in the last couple of playoffs. Just, it's a really good team. They make it deep in the playoffs. I believe they won a state title. Just what can you just take away from playing against them and that just stood out to you the last couple of years?
Oh, the last couple of years been great. Coach Youngblood, he's like me, a Georgia Southern alum, and he has done a phenomenal job with Thompson. But you can say we won, and they had a good football team. But you take John Tavis Curry and put him on the team, and he's gonna change the whole dynamics of it all. We played them 2 years in a row at Thompson, and it's been a dogfight both years. I mean, we went into the half. A lot of people don't realize we went into the half. It was only 7-0, and they scored right before the half to make it 7-0 at the half. And we couldn't hold on in the second half. We got some injuries and some people out of place, and it just kind of slipped away from us. But like I said, Coach Youngblood does a great job, and mad respect for Thompson and the way they go about playing football.
Yes, sir. And then you've been
off the field and help yourself be successful. And we last year, since I've been at Tattnall County, we've signed over 14 kids in the last 3 years, from Air Force Academy to Valdosta to West Georgia to Savannah State. And we try to impress upon our kids, go to school, use football as a vehicle to get an education and not to be, transferring. Because if you go into that transfer portal, like everybody knows, unless you're some D1 phenomenal player, you're going to get stuck. So take advantage of what you got and be fit where you're at. And we kind of preach that to our kids.
Yes, sir. Definitely a great lesson you're teaching them because, as you mentioned, transfer portal is a hot thing right now and a hot topic. But a couple more questions. I'll let you go, Coach. One, I'm going to throw it to you. Just tell me, who are some of those underrated kind of overlooked players on your roster? Just you want to just shed a little bit of light on that, that we can look out for this season that's going to just play a big role for you that not a lot of people know about.
I'm going to tell you, the one that's really underrated, and I feel like, he's not a tall kid, and I keep saying Greg Edwards. I mean, he's going to be a heck of a, to me, one defensive tackle. And I think he's not a long guy, but he's probably about 6'1", 6'2", but he's got the twitch, he's got those intangibles. And I think a lot of people, he's going to play college football somewhere, and I'm hoping it's here in the state of Georgia. And I just feel like some people are just kind of overlooking some things with him. Xavier Friendly's another one of our top football players, but a lot of people are looking at him for deep snapper. But not only can he deep snap, he can actually play the game. We got a corner, Cam Davis. We've got some athletes in different places, and I feel like my biggest one right now being not being looked at is Greg Edwards.
Gotcha, Coach. And then last thing, just tell me, what does it mean to be a Tattnall County Warrior? What do you have to kind of embody, or the traits or the values you need to have in order to kind of be a player for that program and to kind of be on the field playing for you?
Well, one thing with me, like I said, I played at Georgia Southern. I'm old school. We run an old school offense, old school defense, and we preach it every single day. We're finna be preaching here in a minute. We're going to play fast, we're going to play physical, and we're going to be relentless. And you got to have those 3 qualities to get on the grass for us. And if we can't trust you to do those 3 things, then you won't play. And our kids understand you're going to play fast, physical, and be relentless. and I think this crew has gotten those characteristics and taken them on, and I look forward to them tonight and see it in action.
Certainly, Coach. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to do this interview, Coach. Good luck tonight against Bryan County. Hope to stay in touch, and good luck the rest of the way.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. So that was Tattnall County's head coach. Got to learn a little bit about their program. So they'll be a team to watch this season. Made the playoffs last year. Was 4 seed out of the region. Ended up playing Thompson. As we know, Thompson has been one of those teams just really good in the playoffs. Jontavius Curry, went off in the state championship game. I think he had 3 or 4 touchdowns over close to 200 yards. So definitely one of those outstanding players out there in 2A. So just wanted to highlight their program, but we're going to take a quick short break. Thank our sponsor, NFHS Network, and be back on the other side. All right, guys, welcome back. So we are back from break. Let's talk about a couple of things before we get joined by Brett Greenberg and talk a little bit about Alabama football and a little bit about their recruiting. But, yes, sir, it's going to be a jam-packed. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. All right, so let's talk quick softball before we bring them on. Dunwoody dropped their opener to Walton. I'm sure Craig will like to hear that. 10-2. Walton has already played their 4th game of the season. After playing in a tournament, they were 2-1 coming into that game with wins against Campbell and McEachern, and also a loss to Etowah. Walton jumped out to an early 4 lead in that game. They were able to put up 5 runs in the top of the 6th as the first 6 batters reached base to start the big rally. Wildcats got things going against Caldwell, the pitcher, as Amanda Harris led the bottom of the 6th with a double deep to right field for the first hit of the game, and Khan doubled to the right center gap to score and put Dunwoody on the board. Leading 9-2 in the top of the 7th, Walton added in a kind of an insurance run by Volkerding to score, and the Rustlers made it 10-2. So that's what kind of happened as far as softball action. I think I got another major update. It was in Gwinnett. Let me see. Grayson actually beat Tequila 15-5. Yesterday, Journey Madison and Nia McKnight had 3 hits each for the Rams, and McKnight drove in 2 runs. So Carrie Green, Braxton Battle, and Elizabeth Bowen each had 2 hits each, and Battle and Bowen had a pair of RBIs. Grace Bryant, she had a hit, 2 RBIs. Rebecca Lewis had a hit, 2 RBIs, and Taylor Dembowski had also a hit. So Grayson right now in the early stretch are 3-1. So I'm going to hit up Brett real quick, see if he can join. Okay. Says he's in. Need some help. I got you. Yeah, Brett, let's do it. What's going on, Brett?
How you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, man. Pleasure talking to you, man.
Appreciate you having me on.
Of course, man. So I know you with Bama 247, man. So we got to get into it. We got a lot of Bama fans in this office, right? As you probably already know, IJ is a Bama fan. Graham is a Bama fan as well. So tell me a little bit, man. Let's start first with just, what's kind of your day to day at 247, kind of being a Bama 247 writer. What does that kind of entail?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first time we met, we kind of joked about my screen time being, over 12 hours that one day.
Yes.
Try not to look at that as much, but that's kind of the reality of the business, especially in the recruiting front, kind of just scouring social media, hitting up coaches, trainers, players for any type of, insight I can get. Right now it's a little bit down compared to the summer months with guys not being able to visit and starting up the high school season, as you well know, and all the attention kind of turns to fall camp. But, as you know, recruiter never stops. So I'm still kind of plug away with that. But yeah, I kind of got thrown into the fire in June, but that's how I kind of like it and get rolling, and I'm enjoying every day of it. But yeah, it's really just text message, DMs, calls, and keep on going, and never really sleep that much, but I like it.
It sounds like the life of one of those reporters on ESPN, man, like an Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, real quick, man, just what are your thoughts on kind of the flips, man? I mean, Bama has landed some pretty good flips. Peyton Williard, that was supposed to go to Georgia, then he just landed one yesterday from Florida State. So, what are your thoughts on that, and what kind of impact you think they could potentially have in the coming years?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anytime you can make a flip, and especially 2 in 2 days is good news. The fans are pretty happy about it. I think Peyton Woodyard, not as much of a shock, like you said, a long-time Georgia commit, but he had visited Tuscaloosa back in June and absolutely loved it. He loved the attention that Nick Saban gave him and the DB coach Travaris Robinson gave him. He really felt at home there. So it wasn't as much as a shock there. I think Alabama, like you've seen, prioritizes the secondary. You look at last year with Caleb Downs, the Georgia guy, and they're not slowing down that position. Then you pick up Rydarius Red Morgan out of the state of Alabama as well, not as Woodyard and the other guys they're typing to get, but he has a lot of speed, plays in the highest level at Alabama in Class 7A, and you got to think Nick Saban and the coaching staff, or they can evaluate and kind of look beyond the stars, so to speak.
100%. And then tell us, Brett, a little bit about, this is kind of outside of Bama, but what does it kind of go into to kind of get a player to flip, right? And the only reason why I bring that up is because as well as Bama's had some really good flips, you also have Auburn who had some pretty good flips, right? They flipped DeMarcus Riddick from Georgia, and he's going to Auburn. They just landed Perry Thompson in a big deal. So just what this kind of goes into like a player getting flipped, you think?
Can't necessarily totally speak to it, but I think it's just a factor of these coaching staffs and these recruiters really not giving up once these guys are committed. I mean, you see it with Perry Thompson, which was, a big deal on the front. You get Hugh Freeze in, and anybody who's around this business will tell you, and I know you will too, that Hugh Freeze can recruit. He can recruit, and he's never really had anything, and he proved it with DeMarcus Riddick and Perry Thompson. I think it's just, even though you're committed somewhere else, if we want you, we're gonna put in the same resources as if you were not committed there.
100%. And then tell me about the 2024 class, and Bama's trending in the right direction right now. What players have just, in your eyes, has just stood out to you, and what's kind of allowed Alabama, who at first, I think they were barely fringing on top 10 maybe in the class, and now they're all the way up to a top 5 in the recruiting class. So what do you think just kind of allowed that jump and just kind of allowed them to kind of go up to the top?
Yeah, I think you kind of see it year in and year out. Alabama, I think, has the luxury of not only having Nick Saban, but the proof of it to maybe take a longer look at guys and take, a couple more weeks for schools to give them that committable. I think Alabama has that luxury. You see it year in and out. They're not going to have, 20 plus guys commit in June, as Georgia was on that extremely hot run for the last 2 months. I mean, what they're doing is pretty absurd. I mean, Kirby Smart's recruiting like crazy. But yeah, still they're only at 17 commits, which and having the number 4 class. So that's got to tell you something. Pound per pound, I think they have one of the best classes in the country. I think they're very happy with where they've got. There's still some holes. They got 3 interior offensive linemen. I think they're probably going to try to add an offensive tackle here and there. You got kind of a hole at the running back position, but you look at last year and, the running back room got a great boost with, another Georgia guy, and Justice Haynes, which I know you love. But I think, you see it, Alabama's has the ability to, if we want you, we're going to come get you for the most part. Obviously Georgia's recruiting the way they are, but I don't think Alabama's too worried about it from the coaching staff front. I mean, obviously you've got some fans who want to have every 5-star they could possibly have, but that's just not the reality with it right now. And, Nick Saban talked about that a couple of summers ago with the NIL. It's a whole different ball game, but like you said, a number 4 class with only 17 commitments. I don't know if they're going to take, 25, 27 guys the way you see other schools at, but I think, they're comfortable where they're at now. You've got 3 guys this next couple weeks set in their commitment. You've got Dre Kirkpatrick Jr., who's obviously the Alabama legacy. His father, I know that I remember tweeting it out and everybody was like, he already has a son and as a senior. It's just making a lot of people feel old. He's a 3-star out of state Alabama. He, in talking with him, it was obviously his dream offer. He's not one of those kids that doesn't want to follow in his dad's footsteps. He wants to, create that pathway for himself, but also acknowledges that his dad went there and he'd be happy to go there. Another Georgia guy in Edric Houston, Buford guy, 5-star, top-rated defensive lineman who's just he's just nasty. He's one of those guys, one of those recruitments that you don't see as more often. People usually have a good gauge of where he's going. I think he's keeping it close to the vest, and quite frankly, I don't really have an idea of where he's going. I think anybody who does is probably lying to you. And then, I talked about the running back position, but you've got Daniel Hill, who's a 4-star athlete out of Meridian, Mississippi. He'll play running back at the next level. He's been to Tuscaloosa plenty of times this summer. I think Alabama's in good position to get him and fill that running back role.
No, 100%. And actually, I can speak to what you said about Edric Houston because I actually interviewed him at our Corky Kell luncheon, and I couldn't get nothing, at all. All I know is that he got an August commitment coming up. I think he said 27th, but I don't know if that was kind of like he threw that out there. I don't know if that was confirmed, but he did say that at the luncheon. But I know at the end of August he's supposed to commit. But yeah, I tried too. I was like, any top schools, anywhere, just kind of stands out to you, but he kind of just lumped it all together. So yeah, I 100% agree. If you say where he's going to go, you're probably lying unless you're like his parent or something.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I believe it's going to be August 22nd. Right now, like I said, I truly don't know where he's going. I think Alabama's in any recruitment, as you've seen. I think Ohio State's up there. I think it's probably one of the 2 schools for sure.
Yes, sir. Well, let's move to 2025 class, right? I know, each year you got to start getting the guys, right? Starting to see a couple 25s kind of commit. 26 not really there yet, even though Bama did land the offensive lineman from Carrollton, but that was probably the only one. 26s ain't really committing right this second. So tell me about how's the 25 class been so far for Bama? Who are some prospects in your eyes that you think they're kind of after and they're trying to land for the program?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Alabama, you talk to a bunch of these national guys over at 247. They're sitting at number 2 class with just 5 commitments. They've got a pair of 5-star wide receivers and Ryan Williams, who was Alabama Mr. Football as a sophomore. I covered him a couple times in Mobile. He's just as electric as it gets. You got Jamie French out of Mandarin High School down in Florida. Those two have developed quite a good relationship. And obviously you've got the top-ranked running back in Anthony Turbo Rogers. I mean, you talk to these national guys, there's not a better trio of skilled guys committed in a class than Alabama at this point in the cycle. I think they're very happy with where they're at. And then the other 2 commitments are 2 Georgia boys, and Dontrell Glover and Mason Short, 2 defensive tackles. All 5 of them they are active in the recruiting front of their own. I'm not sure if you saw it, but Mason Short put out a picture of himself with the rest of his team, and I can't stop laughing at it. It's like, I did. It's like I wonder which one the Alabama commitment is. It's just like perfect. It's like a perfect meme. but yeah, I think they're definitely going to add a quarterback in that class, whoever it be, uh, a ways away from the 20.
No, 100%. And then you've mentioned kind of some of the Georgia boys just in your eyes. I don't think we mentioned them, but I think, actually we just released this, so I'm going to give you a little breaking news as well. Elsa is actually going to play, released it on our newsletter and our kind of blast. Elsa is going to play against Prince Avenue Christian, I think week 4 or week 5, I believe. So I know Christian Garrett just kind of got an offer from Bama. So just what are your thoughts on that? And then what other Georgia prospects do you think that Bama's after? Obviously, he's one of them.
Yeah, for sure. Like you just said, Christian Garrett, talked to him, great dude, nasty D lineman, obviously out of Prince Avenue. He's part of that stacked roster. I know we talked about in Hoover. You got Aaron Philo, you've got a couple other guys. He seems to be very high on Alabama. He hasn't taken as many visits as other guys. He will certainly be taking more, but I think Alabama's up there for him at this point. Another guy, you've got Jonte Gilbert out of Douglas High School at number 2 safety in the 2025 class. He recently decommitted from Ohio State, was actually committed there for a year. So a little bit of the shocking news there. Anytime you're committed for that long, something must have happened, or maybe he just didn't feel fully comfortable. And like I said, it goes back to earlier. These coaching staffs in Alabama in particular are going to be relentless for whether you're committed somewhere or not. Again, seems like Alabama's in good position there. He told me he'll be in Tuscaloosa for the Arkansas game, and is expecting to drop at top schools. He said around 7 or 9 top schools on October 13th, which is his birthday, which is very cool. And then another guy in the 2024 class, speaking about maybe the hole, so to speak, in the offensive tackle position. There's Favor Edwin out of Eagles Landing. He's a guy who came over. He was born and raised in Nigeria, came over a couple of years ago. He's about to suit up and play his first regular season football snap ever. And Crazy. It was kind of getting his take on it. I mean, for a guy to not play yet and get an offer from Alabama, I mean, that's telling you something. I know he's very excited to put the pads on, put on more film. I think Alabama's going after him. And he was telling me, he was there during the Champions Cookout last weekend of July, and he just had a great time, from the coaching staff to the scavenger hunt to the cookout to hanging out with the other 2024 guys, and coming more off the 24 class. I think most classes are like this, but any recruit I've talked to, it's just they kind of harp on how close they are. They've got a group chat. Some of these guys they haven't met yet, but they feel like they've known each other for years. They're like, hey, who are we going to go get next, type of thing. But those are kind of the main Georgia prospects. And of course, there's a bunch more. You've got Julian Lewis, who I saw for the first time in Hoover. I'm sure you've seen him before, but I mean, he's just as good as it gets. Regardless, I think he's the top quarterback in the country, regardless of class. Really, maybe top player. And I think Alabama's in good position there. He took his last visit of the summer in Tuscaloosa. That was the second time in Tuscaloosa, so that's got to be kind of telling. He's another one of those guys that kind of knows what he's doing and keeping it close to the vest, but you've got to think with the 2026 O-lineman Zakai Helton and 2024 tight end Caleb Odom headed to Tuscaloosa, there's certainly some talk there for sure.
No, 100%, and he did just announce his top 8, and Bama's in there, so definitely got to be persuading them a little bit. And I want to ask you, too, you've been in the industry for a little while now, just how serious do you take like commitment? Obviously it's a serious thing, but like as we've seen, we could see a player flip, right? We could see a player that's been committed to a school for a year and a half, and then out of nowhere, hey, I'm decommitting. So what do you think factors you said some of the factors that goes into that, but what do you think, how serious would you take a commitment from a player? Like, you take it with a grain of salt, or do you just try to, be that team that kind of comes in and say, hey, this is what we can offer, we really want you? Like, how does all that kind of work out?
Yeah, I think now more than ever compared to other years, you take it with a huge grain of salt, honestly, just with the way NIL is and some team coming at the last minute. And quite frankly, we know exactly what's going on. It's, hey, here's a bigger bag for you, honestly. just how it is. But yeah, especially with the 2025 guys, I think, like I said, there's plenty of way to go, and certainly with 2024 guys as well. I've always kind of had the same mindset. Doesn't matter until pen's to paper, until you sign your national letter of intent in December. You try to remind fans of that all the time, but sometimes it doesn't get through to them. But yeah, commitment's a big deal. It's good for the fan base. It's good for the boost of the class, obviously. But anything could change at any given moment, and you've seen it quite a few numbers of times this past week for sure.
No, 100%. And then this is just, I don't know how much you cover, obviously, like the Alabama just program. I know you cover from a recruiting perspective, but just being at the games and covering the team. But I just want your thoughts on how good you think they'll do this season out there in the SEC West, and do you think they're a championship contender? Right? Obviously, we got to see how they're going to look at quarterback. We know running back, they're going to look good. We know that defense is going to be good yet again. But just what are your thoughts on that? How good do you think Alabama will be this season?
Yeah, I think anytime you have a roster with the talent that Alabama has, they have a chance. They always have a chance, and the coaching staff with Nick Saban. But, quite frankly, the quarterback position seems to be a huge question mark. And even a week into fall camp, it still seems to be a question mark. I don't know if anybody's really separated themselves from that competition. Nick Saban talked about it the other week. They're evaluating it. And you know how Nick Saban is. He's also going to keep everything close to the vest. He may have an answer right now, but from what my team has seen at that fan day and open practice, the only open practice of the fall, it doesn't seem like anyone's really separated himself. I think the biggest thing with Alabama, and most Alabama fans will tell you, last year compared to other years, just the penalties and the stupid mistakes compared to years before was just so uncharacteristic and frustrating for the fan base, who is as spoiled as it gets. Let's just be real. Graham's shaking his head.
That's true. Graham's definitely shaking his head.
But yeah, I think again, I think it was Josh Pate who was talking about it. Just the expectations that Alabama has year in, year out, which, they've done it to themselves, winning all these national championships. But if you put their roster on any other uniform, Georgia Tech, Florida State, whoever it may be, they're national title favorites. It's just the expectations that Alabama has built for itself is just held to a higher standard.
100%. And then you mentioned real quick, and it's a point I want to revisit. You talked about players already creating that group chat, kind of doing that recruiting and things like that. So would you just say like that kind of comes from just, DMs, texting each other, knowing like, okay, hey, you're getting recruited by Bama, I'm getting recruited by Bama. Like, how does that all kind of just work and kind of building that rapport when you haven't even really met each other yet?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple different sides to it. Obviously, a lot of these guys, for one, have, whether they're in-state, have competed against each other for a while and kind of grew up together, or, maybe they both were there the same weekend. Like, for instance, Julian Sand and Jalen Mbakwe were two of the early commitments, I guess. They committed back last year. And those two, they exchanged phone numbers, and they've kind of just talked day in and day out and saying, who can we get next type thing. And then they'll add someone to the group chat. I was talking with a couple of players yesterday too, as well, and a lot of, like I said, play on the same 7-on-7 team. Met at the UA Future 50 in Bradenton, Florida, in June, and I think it's just it seems to be the same message over and over again. It's come to Bama, be great, be developed, go to the NFL type thing, and obviously it kind of speaks for itself.
No, 100%, and then. You're in the Bama area, so tell me what schools are you going to be going to go visit. Obviously, I've heard some good things about Saraland. I've heard some good things about Thompson, Moody, and places like that. But what are some programs you're going to visit throughout the season just to kind of, get a little bit of intel on the recruiting for as players, or some programs you're kind of just excited to see in the state of Alabama?
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned it right there with Saraland. Reigning 6A state champions, they've got probably the best duo in the country in KJ Lacey, Texas commit, and Ryan Williams, with obviously the Alabama commit. Certainly them. There's a couple other schools down south in Mobile area, Spanish Fort. But honestly, I'm pretty pumped for a week from now. Put all this effort and helped prep for Corky Kell, 2 years ago when I was an intern with for Atlanta, and then scheduling conflicts, wasn't able to go to any games. Get those matchups. I'm just pumped for Corky Kell. I know how much work to it from the other other side and everything that goes into it. So I'm pumped for that for sure. There's a little bit of a rivalry between Alabama high schools and Georgia high schools, and we talked about the two championships 7-on-7, 3 of them from Georgia, and just a good love it. And